So today we're going to talk about the 3 hidden causes of inflammation. Out of all the medications sold in the US, even worldwide, it's the anti-inflammatories that dominate because so many people are taking meds for inflammation more than any other condition. And I'm going to talk about the 3 hidden causes of inflammation that you may have not heard about before, okay? If we take cortisol, for example, cortisol is an adrenal hormone, okay? And it is the hormone in the body that is supposed to stop inflammation. It's supposed to inhibit inflammatory conditions. Now think about any condition that involves inflammation, whether it's autoimmune or just pain and inflammation in general. They always use prednisone, cortisol cream, cortisone injections. It's all cortisol, but of course it's synthetic. And yes, it comes with a package, but the point is that cortisol stops inflammation. Now, if that is true, then chronic inflammatory conditions must be a state of low cortisol, right? Makes logical sense. But if that's true, how do you explain all the people who have arthritis, serious inflammation, they go get tested, and they have high cortisol or normal cortisol, okay? I mean, look at this. This is a SIBA Encyclopedia Medical Illustrations Endocrine System Volume 4 on page 84. Okay, there's a condition called Cushing's syndrome, okay, right here. So this is a very common condition. It's in a situation where you have too much cortisol. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the symptoms. You got belly fat. You have major inflammation throughout the body. You have sleep problems, high blood pressure, gastric acidity, heartburn. You have a lowered immune system. You have excessive thoughts. You keep thinking, can't turn it off. You have a low tolerance to stress. But you have a lot of inflammation in the body from high cortisol. Why is that? That is because of this. And I did another video on insulin resistance, and I told you that I was going to do a video on cortisol resistance. There's a condition called cortisol resistance in which the receptor for cortisol is downgraded. In other words, it doesn't receive that well anymore. So we have the adrenal gland that produces cortisol. It's supposed to go into a receptor. And if there's too much of that hormone being pumped out because the person's under chronic stress, whatever, then the receptor is going to downgrade and protect the body against the excess amount of cortisol because it's not good for the body to have too much cortisol. There's side effects. I mean, just look at prednisone. The side effects from prednisone, it's crazy. So the body will protect itself, especially the inside of the cell and certain delicate tissues, by creating resistance, okay? The problem is then that blocks the return communication, the negative feedback loop, and so now the adrenal doesn't get the message that this connected, so the body keeps making more and more cortisol. So now we have a situation where we have certain parts of the body that have low cortisol and other parts of the body that have high cortisol. This explains the confusion people have because the symptoms for high are almost identical to the symptoms with low. Now, there is another condition called Addison's disease, okay, which is very rare, where your adrenals aren't functioning anymore, and you're very, very thin. Your skin becomes tan or darker, but you have very serious immune problems, okay? But the point is that when you have too much cortisol, it can produce a state where you get a lot of chronic inflammation. Why? Because you develop the resistance, okay? Resistance in the cell. Now, what I want to talk about is what causes this cortisol resistance. It's chronic stress, okay? And I want to increase your awareness on what that means. It could also be being lonely for a long period of time, okay? That can increase cortisol. Or having losses, okay? A loss of a loved one or a threatened loss, okay? I mean, when my son was 6 months old, he developed infantile botulism, okay? That's a pretty serious disease. It kills all the nerves. Only 20 children a year get it. It's very rare. And he got it, okay? It created a lot of stress with our family. He's doing fine now, but the point is that that's a threat of a loss, okay? So you have losses, you have surgeries, trauma, mental stress. especially if you're not exercising, okay? No sleep. I mean, I remember myself, I had 12 years where I did not sleep very well. There was nights I didn't even sleep for 1 minute. I stayed up all night long. So that actually really wore out my adrenals. In fact, that's why I'm doing this video right now, because I had this condition. The point is that there are all these triggers that can happen, and a lot of people have chronic stress, and that creates this problem right here. And eventually, they develop chronic inflammation, and then they're put on a medication, okay? Here's the problem. When you lose the function of cortisol, you also lose the control of your immune system. You become more susceptible to viruses. Viruses go in like a rocket ship, okay? And that leads me to another cause of inflammation, and that's a chronic infection, okay? So now chronic infection could also come from taking a lot of antibiotics. It could come from your entire gut being imbalanced because you don't have enough flora. It can come from many things. It could also come from an adrenal situation as well. But a lot of people have this chronic inflammatory condition because they have microbes growing in the body in excessive amounts. It could be viral, it could be bacterial, it could be yeast, it could be nanobacteria, it could be mycoplasma. And then one day they might discover it because they take an antibiotic and they feel great. Well, that's just a big clue that you have microbes growing in your body, and that's what's creating the inflammation, maybe in a joint or in a different part of the body. These people usually also have chronic fatigue syndrome. What I'm going to recommend is to take a natural herbal antibiotic, and I have videos on that, more than an actual antibiotic, because you're going to just make the problem worse over time. Now, a lot of times these cross over. You can have a problem with cortisol and problem with infections, or a problem with infections and can stress out the adrenals and cause high levels of cortisol. But when you lose the adrenal function, okay, and you can have high cortisol and it's just not working, you open the door for viruses, and also you can open the door for getting autoimmune diseases, okay? It's nearly always related to some stress event that comes right before that autoimmune condition. Okay, so now that you're tracking with that, let's talk about the third cause of inflammation, which is basically insulin resistance. You may already know this. I have a lot of videos on this. I've been talking about this. I'll put some links down below. But if you're new to my channel and you don't know this, this is going to be very important. Insulin resistance is a condition where you're producing too much insulin, okay? That excess amount causes a lot of inflammation in the body. Plus the fact that this is triggered by your high carbohydrate diet and your frequency of eating, okay? So if you eat too frequently and you have too many carbs, you are going to eventually get inflammation. So what you need to do is get on the program to reduce your carbs and do intermittent fasting. There's a link down below for that. But if I had chronic inflammation, okay, I would be on a healthy keto plan. I would do intermittent fasting. That's going to bring it right down. I would probably, if I had any possible infection going on, I would take an herbal antibiotic, some natural ones like garlic, on a regular basis. And I would do everything I can to get out of my stress situation, okay, improve the stress. I'd focus on getting more sleep, go for long walks, and whatever is triggering this, try to minimize the damage control. And you would find out that your inflammation would drop very, very fast. Okay, so go ahead and try it and give me your comments below. I'll see you in the next video. So if you want more knowledge on how to create a healthy body, subscribe now and get daily notifications. Daily notifications, that sounds weird. Well, I'll just remind you on a daily basis. How about that?